It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and we're gathered in ops awaiting an arrival. Some awkwardness between Bashir and Dax, watched by O'Brien and Worf, is eventually interrupted by Cisco's new ship turning up, and it just so happens to be another Defiant class. That'll make the set construction crew happy at least. It's the USS Sao Paulo, but not for long, as Cisco's been given permission to change the name. Everybody makes an excuse to leave the bridge so Cisco can get acquainted with the new carpet and purple trim on the Defiant 2 Dominion Boogaloo. To another ship we go, specifically a nicked Jem'Hadar vessel transporting Damar Dawson Biggs and company back to Cardassia. He's had word some other officers have decided to rebel and join him, so we're here to organize things. Or not, as once we teleport down, we're greeted by the sounds of gunfire and death. One of the expected defectors has betrayed the Cardigan Liberation Front for Dominion clout. Scarpering's not an option either, as the ship we came here on just got kaboomed. Plain simple Garak has an idea for where we can lie low, and off we all trot. The hiding spot is the basement of a house, and the person showing them in looks familiar. That's because she's Mila, the housekeeper and confidant of Anabra and Tain, and this is the house Plain Simple Garak lived in as a child. Damar Dawson Biggs is a little surprised to find the former head of the Obsidian Order was secretly Plain Simple Garak's dad, but then secrets were their bread and butter. To business, and Kara wants a phone so we can warn the other Cardigan Liberation Front cells. Mila says she'll try and get one after a little persuasion, leaving them to tidy up. Back on DS9, Odo's up and about. Bashir gives him both a clean bill of health and the unpleasant truth about the origins of the changeling virus. Odo doesn't care about the technicalities surrounding Section 31's official standing, or that he wasn't the intended target. The Federation was part of this, and he wants to know how they plan to proceed. The answer is they don't. The Federation Council had a little chat about maybe stopping the genocide and decided they didn't want to. The Founders are bloody dangerous after all, and saving them could prolong or even lose a war that's already killed so many. Odo gives his word that he won't provide the cure to the Founders when Cisco asks, but not before pointing out the Federation's vocal objections to Section 31 only last until they're useful. Rom, the underappreciated brother, is cheerleading the Darbo table operators. They want to demand Quark takes a lower percentage of their tips, so he's offering moral support. It goes better than expected, and Quark says he'll think about it, but that's mostly because he's pulled away by an unexpected call from Grand Nagus Zek. Over a particularly terrible connection, one that keeps cutting out, Zek tells him he's retiring and is naming a replacement. That replacement will be him. Elsewhere on the station, Bashir and Dax have literally bumped into each other. Awkward small talk gives way to them both deciding it's silly and having a chat about things instead. They both agree they fancy each other and everything's grand. Then they convince themselves it would be awful if things went pear-shaped and they couldn't be friends afterwards, so reluctantly talk each other out of it again, with neither sounding particularly convinced. Back to Quark, and he's planning his new life of unfathomable greed and indulgence. He's magnanimous about it, though. Everybody currently here will be welcome to join him in living it up, and the chance of getting in on the action is why Brunt, FCA, turns up. He's heard a rumor and, upon Quark confirming it, falls to his knees and offers worship. Back on Cardassia, a different variant of Jeffrey Combs is making another announcement. This one is to the general population about how the Cardigan Rebellion has been crushed and Damar Dawson Biggs killed with it. That's news to Damar Dawson Biggs himself. He's watching the show and is distraught upon learning that every cell of the Cardigan Liberation Front has been destroyed. And to top it off, any phone call powerful enough to reach the Federation would be trackable. Their hiding place may be a little less temporary than anticipated. The news has soured somewhat for Quark as well. Brunt, FCA, is offering him a bribe to become an official advisor. That would normally be good news, but Quark's shocked when Brunt wants a receipt because bribes are now tax-deductible. The very idea of tax is antithetical to business, but then so are the sweeping social reforms that Grand Nagus Zek has been enacting over the last few months. Pensions and health care don't pay for themselves, which is why he implemented an income tax. And Quark won't simply be able to change things back either. Zek created a council with the power to overrule decisions from the Nagus. This is too much for Quark to bear. He prostrates himself before the money god and begs forgiveness for Ferengi. He's so upset that he even forgets to offer the traditional bribe. There's a distinct air of defeat in a basement on Cardassia when Mila comes to see them. She's been out and heard the public talk about Damar Dawson Biggs and the rebellion. Not insults, as he assumes, but rumours that he's alive and this is all just a ruse before striking the Dominion. Sounds like an opportunity to Kira. We might not have military support anymore, but with a little coaxing, perhaps the population can rise up into a full-blown revolution. While they make plans, Odetta Olivia Cromwell, Lord Protector of the Dominion, is changing hers. Rumours of the Federation having found a solution to the Breen energy vampire gizmo have reached her, so she wants to pull everything back and lock up Cardigan Space tight. The Federation have proven time and again they avoid direct confrontation, so the Dominion will just sit here and rebuild its forces for a few years. Plans are changing on DS9 as well. Quark's learned just how far these social changes have gone and is repulsed, though Rom, the underappreciated brother, sees the logic in them. Maybe he's just doing that to distract Quark so he can buy the bar for less money. If so, it works. Quark doesn't even haggle the amount Rom offers, and is disgusted at himself afterwards when he realizes this plague of altruism has affected him too. The realization makes him decide that if being Nagus comes with all of these anti-business strings, he'll turn down the job on principle. To Cardassia once more, where we're skulking in shadows. The reason is because Plain Simple Garak is doing a bit of the old terrorism. He has some trouble on his way out, so Damar Dawson Biggs steps in as a distraction, and when it works, Kira poops yellow at one guard and Plain Simple Garak shanks the other. The resulting kaboom of a Dominion barracks draws a healthy crowd. A rousing speech from Damar Dawson Biggs about rising up as one gets them all chanting, and the mob sounds ready to riot as we slip away. Back on DS9, Bashir and Dax are talking about how good it is that they finally got over the whole romance thing and can be rational, reasonable friends as they climb into a lift. They've reconsidered things by the time they arrive in Ops, as they're both chewing on each other's faces, and Worf sends them back down for some privacy. Over in Quark's, we're drawing another story to a close. Grand Nagus Zek arrives with the mother of Quark and Rom, and Quark immediately launches into a speech about how he won't take the job unless he has a free rein to reverse all these silly changes. Not a problem, says Zach, as he wasn't getting the job anyway. The Grand Nagus thought he was talking to Rom on the phone, as that's who he wants as his replacement. Quark might not appreciate Rom's qualities, but their mum does, and knows he's the sort of person to preside over a new, fairer Ferenginar. Quark can't go quite so far as to take it well, but does at least agree this new world of theirs is exactly the sort of place Rom can make. Not that it will extend to the bar. Quark will make sure this establishment is the last bastion of greed and avarice in the entire Ferengi alliance. Brunt FCA tries to switch allegiance to Rom now he's the one with the money, and is frog-marched away by Eggnog, leaving Rom to come to terms with his new job. Admiral Ross is updating everyone on Dominion movements. Everything they've got has been pulled back to Cardigan Space, and he thinks the offensive we'd need to break through would result in a very bloody affair indeed. The Romulans are in favour of just leaving them be, but Cisco disagrees. Letting them rebuild just kicks the can down the road and will make the job that much harder later. Martok, husband of Sorella, agrees, and so does Ross, so we're off to invade Cardassia. Serious business, so let's add to the things on Cisco's mind by revealing that Cassidy is pregnant. With all that's been going on, Cisco missed his contraceptive injection last month. Not that it's a source of panic, as they're both excited at the prospect. Cassidy's a little concerned that the warning from the prophets might be related to her pregnancy, but Cisco thinks not, so we'll leave them to celebrate their unexpected development until the final part of our last adventure. The penultimate episode of Deep Space Nine, and a farewell wave to Ferengi society. Massive cultural changes have been enacted back on Ferenginar, not that we get to see any of them. Perhaps after being burned by the absolute dog egg of Profit and Lace, we've decided to tie up the Ferengi thread far away from actually touching on any of it ourselves. Things have changed while we were busy elsewhere, and that's all there is to it. You could be forgiven for being a touch disappointed by this, but there's an argument to be made that this is preferable. We spent the last 7 years watching Quark, not Ferengi societal progress, so seeing how it affects him personally is a far more logical use of the time we have left. It also serves as both juxtaposition against his otherwise somewhat progressive behaviour, as well as still fitting into his whole outlook on life. Some of Quark's prior actions, like the decision to not price gouge when supplying food during the occupation, paint him as more altruistic than Ferengi society is generally purported to be. He certainly made it clear he'd take care of his friends and family as Nagus, for example. He's not just a good Ferengi, he's a Ferengi that's good. You could perhaps then expect him to understand, or at least tolerate, some of the societal changes on Ferenginar, and that's the nub of it. Quark may be a Ferengi that's good, but he's only good up to a point. Whether that point is the limit of his own morals, or just the effect that an environment of unfettered greed has had on them, is another matter. Maybe if he'd grown up in the Federation, he'd have been a positive saint. But he's not a saint. He's someone who desperately enjoys the Ferengi way of doing things, yet isn't willing to be as much of a bastard in the process. He still wants to play the game, still wants to be the winner in the How to Make a Thing Mine competition, and that's important in understanding his reaction. Societal reform fundamentally changes the rules for all the players, and Quark's already found his preferred way of playing. If many of the more altruistic standards by which he measures himself become not only accepted but legally enforced, well, where's the fun in that? It's not hard mode anymore, it's not even the same game. All of which risks sounding like the tiresome get good argument of gamers TM, but it's actually the opposite. He's not upset about others having access to an easier game now, he's upset that he's had the option for something harder taken away. Look at how he eventually responds to Rom, the underappreciated brother, becoming Nagus. He's initially a bit of a git because, as I said, he's a bit of a git, but he also ultimately congratulates Rom and admits he's exactly the person for the job. Then he enforces new rules on himself that go beyond the ones he had before. Water the drinks, rig the tables, all said in front of his customers. He's making things harder for himself again so that he can have the satisfaction of winning his own new game. A game that he could never have played as Nagus of a reformed Ferenginar. A game that matters more to him than all of the latinum that role would have brought, because ultimately for Quark, it's the game that has always mattered just that little bit more than the reward. Let's cover the rest of the stuff happening in this one then, shall we? Odo now knows that his disease was caused by the Federation, at least by a few degrees of separation, and calls it the bullshit that it is. Biological weapons are a no-no even in our own time, with the overwhelming majority of nations being signatories of the Biological Weapons Convention outlawing them, so the Federation using a loophole like Section 31 to do it in the utopian future is an argument for which Odo has no patience. Still, he gives his word to not share the cure with the Founders, just like the Federation gave their word to not do genocide. Keeping with the Federation, we've got a new ship. The Defiant 2 Dominion Boogaloo makes the loss of the original completely fucking pointless and highlights just how ineffective easily reversed losses are in making a new baddie look threatening. It's done for budgetary reasons, of course, there being no extra money to make models and sets of a different class, but it's still a very good example of how that big red reset button I banged on about during the Voyager runs robs a story of impact. The Defiant 2 feels like exactly what it is, somebody trying to correct a mistake with a new carpet and purple highlights. Elsewhere, the Dax Bashir business finally gets itself sorted. I've never particularly cared about the will they won't they stuff, so I'm probably not the best person to make comments on this one. To those of you who enjoyed it, I'm happy for you. Let's go to Cardassia instead, and the fall, then rise, of the Cardigan Liberation Front. A betrayal for political power isn't exactly a unique event on Cardassia, but it's one Damar Dawson Biggs clearly wasn't expecting. The whole movement is wiped out save for himself, Kira, and Plain Simple Garak. Going into hiding gives us a chance for a little more on Plain Simple Garak, which is always welcome. Tying it back to Mila from 4 seasons ago is a particularly nice touch, so we'll give some points to whoever thought of it. Anywho, the deepest depression of defeat turns into a rebirth of sorts, and perhaps one that's helping Damar Dawson Biggs understand why the occupation turned out the way it did. Hope is far more resilient than any invading force has ever understood. Speaking of invasions, let's end with ours. Starfleet spent 7 years mostly looking the other way when things get serious, more inclined to send a strongly worded letter than actually do anything. It's an observation I've banged on about for a while on a number of topics. It's also something observed by the Dominion, hence 8th Uncle Wayun concluding an attack would not be forthcoming if they fell back. Things have changed, though. Despite not particularly wanting to press an attack, Ross listens to Cisco when he's told it's the only real way to solve the problem permanently. As the ranking Starfleet officer there, Ross could have gone the other way and made caution the dominant vote. He didn't. Perhaps that's because he's the first admiral to listen to people on the front line. Perhaps it's because he learned for himself that you can't appease bullies, his experience with the Romulans trying to fortify a Bajoran moon having taught him. Perhaps it's because he knows Cisco's done some real dodgy shit, just like him, and his opinion carries more weight as a result. Either way, we're committed to a final assault. No matter what happens now, it's guaranteed to end in flames. End of episode.
I hope you've saved the best for last, because we need to wrap this up.
I'm not a complete amateur, you know. I said there were 2 options for dramatic effect.
Really? I didn't know you had a background in entertainment.
Not exactly, but controlling what people see on the internet means I deal with fiction every day.
We don't have time for satire, kid. Just get on with bloody story.
Option 2 for escaping the internet. Unlike option 1, this is more difficult. It requires effort, help from others, and a bit of luck as well.
But it'll get us out of here, right?
Yes, it will.
Space Dog, I know we should probably get the details, but this asshole wasted a load of credit skits, so we'd best jump straight into it.
Let's be honest, it'd have just been science bollocks anyway.
All right, Al, we're sold. What do we need to do?
Are you sure? Get on with it. All right, then settle down and I'll tell you how to open the back end.
Sigh, I should have guessed it would be a bum joke. Woof.